Oh, cool, cool. I'll listen. Yeah, no, it'd be good, man. Yeah, well, yeah, it's funny. I grew up with this stuff, okay, and literally, I mean, it was a different time period even for me. I was never particularly. I didn't. I didn't. This was not a show and tell. I didn't share this, as far as what did you do last summer? I got picked up by a couple of aliens, and they did medical experiments on me, and et cetera, et cetera. It didn't work that way. I mean, literally, it was kind of a. In fact, I was really somewhat reticent to even bring up my uncle's name, but because there's a whole, there's another side to this thing, which is a little bit. I mean, obviously, it's immensely confusing and dark and what have you. But I mean, this is not. These experiences are not particularly easy. Yeah. So anyway, I just kind of throw that in there because, especially, in fact, my cousin, who is George's grandson, he had asked. We'd moved away from the desert, moved into town, and he'd asked my mother if he could just sleep on her couch, for a while. So he stayed with us for about 4 months because all the activity out there was so intense he couldn't handle it anymore. So he was having a mental problem as far as the whole thing goes. So,
well, was it because the visitors, going out there and trying to channel UFOs to fly by?
Yeah. Well, the other thing too is, everyone says, well, people. I mean, some people say, oh God, you're so lucky. I really believe that my uncle's activity out there was part of the reasons why there was so much activity out there. And I actually, I never wanted to go into any of this stuff with him simply because I thought he was the cause of it. I mean, and I think in many respects he was, because he was so active and there was so much activity as far as that, it just became this conduit for, this whole UFO receptacle out there where people come and visit, and he, for some reason, and I believe it was through Frank Kreitzer, had learned how to, in fact, communicate with them. Through some sort of vibratory, channeling, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, I don't know the specifics as far as what he did. The only thing is, I mean, they would do a lot of hokey stuff that, I mean, incidentally, I have tapes of channeling sessions, as far as that. And so I'm a little bit, it's a little odd because, I guess you'd have to be there. It just sounded really weird, as far as all this channeling information that they were doing and the whole conversation going on. So it's just different. It's hard to explain, but I have them. And, so I've listened to them all, as far as on some of the stuff, and some of the science is a little bit, it's a little, everything's a little hokey, I mean, but again, everyone was trying their very best and trying to figure out what they had, and it's kind of like, and I equate it to like biblically, I mean, the UFO and the whole Bible thing is, I mean, it's all over there. I mean, there's no question about, and in fact, even with all of Stitchin's work and the whole thing, we know for a fact that the Anunnaki were here, and the whole Sumerian text, the whole thing. I mean, there's no dispute about any of this stuff here. So we've got this information as far as what it is, but then again, trying to explain in language back then and transferring it from whatever, whatever languages that you could, put together, from Greek to Latin to English to, it's all in the translation. You get somebody trying to explain what a fire in the sky is, or, like Ezekiel's will, and, Moses talking to this fire, et cetera, et cetera. Well, they're talking about extraterrestrials. I mean, they're talking about, and so essentially we're just, we're hybrid, and that's our legacy. But, I woke up, in fact, and realized that literally everything I've ever learned in school, from a historical perspective or from a theological perspective, has been wrong dated, wrong. I don't know whether it was by intent. I keep thinking, and more, I think it's actually more intentional, that they just were trying to literally, brainwash us into subservient, behavior, which it's apparent. But we've all lived a lie. Everything we know is probably
untrue,
is inaccurate.
Well,
untrue.
What gets me is, recently the Finks, and I brought this up now numerous times on my show, the wear marks on the back of the Finks, for years, they said, oh, that was caused by the sand. Well, recently they came to the conclusion the wear marks on the back of the Finks, was not created from the sand. It was created from an ocean, and that was the wear.
Right.
Yeah, and then if you think about that, well, when was the ocean there? It kind of predates man. And then when you look at some of these caves, the drawings of men flying in machines or helmets on, and now we're talking about just after prehistoric man drawing in caves, right?
Right.
Let's face it, if you didn't know what an airplane was, never even had a thought of an airplane, how could you draw a picture of a guy sitting in an airplane and flying in the sky? I mean,
right.
So it tells me that maybe we've been rebooted a few times. And, maybe we've been rebooted by, maybe aliens. And you have to be crazy not to believe that there's life out there. Because there is life out there. We don't know what it is. We can't rationalize it because, be honest with you, they're not going to think the way we think at all. I mean, they haven't grown up the way we grew up. They're not going to have the same thoughts that us humans have. But look at this. I mean, men have always had to believe in gods, the fire god, the water god, the god of Olympus. They had to believe in something. Otherwise, men wouldn't exist. They would, if you took away your belief in God, you would have nothing to keep you going. And wouldn't it be absolutely horrible to find out, or a shock to find out, one day that the God that we pray to, is not the God we thought it is. Maybe it was gods of aliens.
Well, yeah. Well, yeah. No, I mean, the science is coming out. I mean, it's clearly evident. We are children of a lesser God. I mean, and it's funny. You get into the historical side of this whole thing. Even the lesser gods, acknowledge this supreme, creator of the first cause. This whole thing, But genetically, I mean, we've been re-engineered. I mean, that again keeps coming up more and more and more and more as far as this. And I was asked people, how come dogs don't talk? Well, I mean, I mean, as far as us as the human being, et cetera, we are. But one thing that we have is this divine divinity. And that's something that is literally that is the get out of jail free card, is that divinity within inside of us, that spark that we're part of the first cause. And even though we had a lot of artificial or lesser gods that have engineered and played around, if you're a human being, you have that. Well, with the exception of maybe Donald Trump. Joe.
I'm sorry, I found that a little funny there.
But really, I mean, but we have this divinity, and even Donald Trump too. We have this divinity, this divine spark that literally, I mean, ties us in, and that's essentially here's the really weird stuff, and that comes up is essentially we're all walking, talking gods. It's just it's the information we have, and this is the key thing that at least in my lifetime, I hope to be able that message to get out there. As far as I think. And again, I mean, I can't prove it, but I think it's kind of like a matter of, Dorothy, click your heels 3 times, and you can get back into whole Kansas. The whole thing, as far as like the power and information we have, it's inside of us, et cetera, et cetera. We just haven't figured out how to utilize it yet. And I think that can be through a pulse wave, and I think that's going to happen. I've had some very vivid dreams about these pulse waves that we're going to actually receive, and I think that is going to be an interesting thing. But catalog-wise, UFO-wise, I think it's pretty much understood right now. There's probably maybe a catalog of about 105 different alien species that have visited here, that there's at least some record of that. So we're not alone. But again, we definitely have this, divine spark, or this part of this creator that literally, if we can figure out how to do this, there's no problem that we can't conquer. So I do have faith. Like again, when it comes down to the war of the SIS or AI or anything like that, there's nothing more complete or better than what we have as far as this, of who we are. And, we have things like compassion and empathy and all the other stuff that, that they've been trying to, suck out of us, but it's not going to work. It just isn't.
That could be the thing that, people think, well, aliens, I have so many people have told me, guests on my show, or people text me, they'll sit there and say, well, aliens give off orbs. They're friendly, furry, lovable creatures. You know what? The one thing we have, what makes us human, at least a lot of us, right? They might not have that because the way they were, whatever way they were brought up, they're advanced compared to us. The thoughts we have, they might not have the same type of thoughts. We could be nothing more, honestly, than an ant to an alien species.
Sure.
And that...
Or food.
Yeah. And what really gets me, like if you go to South America, you go to the Amazon, for example, what is really, really scary is they have the cattle mutilations here in this country. Well, I've seen where, I've had some people in different jobs, government jobs, actually send me some pictures of people being mutilated the same way that the cattle are. But sure. It's happening there. But I come to the conclusion it's probably even happening here, but we're not going to find out about it.
Yeah, well, no, the other thing too, the whole rosy scenario, backing up to what you're saying as far as, it's all warm and fuzzy and et cetera, et cetera. Yeah, there are, there was this mandate that I believe that was kind of, the construct as far as, various, ruling bodies out there in the universe. And I believe that there are ruling bodies. I actually believe that there's a confederation, and I think that there is that, but like everything, no one follows all the rules. And but I really believe, but you have to look at everything from there is no all 100% good, nor is there all 100% evil. There's a little of both here and there. And so when you're talking about extraterrestrials, just like you mentioned, yeah, you have, and then you have things that we have that are innate within ourselves, that at least the majority of us who are not amoral, that we literally, that we wouldn't go. There are places we wouldn't go as far as that, but there's some aliens that will, that don't have that. They just don't have that sense. And you have to obviously watch out for that. So this is some serious business when you're talking about people that literally could wipe us off the face of the planet. Literally, you have to be very careful as far as when you're dealing with all this stuff. And I think that there's some, there's a lot of naive, as far as, well, they're they're not gonna do this, they're not gonna do that. Well, we've seen cattle mutilations. There's a lot of disappearing people and children that literally there's just no one knows where they're at, and I don't believe that they're just this whole tribe of serial killers as far as that, or as far as that. So what it comes down to is I really believe, Gary, that like there's a whole mix of stuff out there, and we're all part of this. But this prime directive, and it's kind of like the Star Trekian prime directive type thing where literally I think everyone's the planet Earth has a lot of stuff here. We have a lot of minerals, a lot of valuable stuff here, and I think as part of the thing is they're not supposed to interfere within our day-to-day lives, but it's like I said before, I don't think they follow the rules. I think the Greys are part of that. There's been a whole argument about, well, the Greys are good, et cetera, et cetera. I think they're a part of the rule breakers, as far as their origins, as far as that stuff goes, and I think that they lost their ability to procreate. So I think and as far as the hybrid thing, as far as that whole thing, which I used to chafe at that whole information, like, oh God, interbreeding, et cetera, et cetera. You know, I mean, hey, it's kind of, you know, this whole, you know, especially with all the information, like